All right, guys. Happy New Year and welcome to the Helicopter Podcast. I'm your guy, Halsey Scheider. Sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is a little more raspy than usual. It's always raspy, but it has like an extra twang of rasp today. So forgive me, but Happy New Year. And honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to kick off the new year than Kevin LaRosa joining the podcast today. If you are unfamiliar with Kevin, you've been living under a rock in the helicopter world. Kevin is probably, arguably, kind of the guy in Hollywood that has put together so many amazing sequences in aviation, cinematography, Top Gun, just to name one of the big ones, of course. So just so lucky. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Ozzy. Man, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for that incredible intro. I'll wire you $100 for that.
Yeah, perfect. You can just hit me up on Venmo. And as always, special thanks to MHM Publishing and the Vertical Helicast platform, Bell Helicopters, and Celicopter for making this podcast possible. So, Kevin, for our listeners that might have been living under a rock, who just give us the 2-3 minute skinny of who you are, what your background is, and kind of what makes you such a badass.
All right. I don't know about the badass part. I'm simply a guy that is absolutely insanely crazy and passionate about my profession. And my profession is aviation, but it's a very niche market of aviation. So I'm third generation aviator, second generation aerial coordinator, and motion picture stunt pilot. So grew up living and breathing aviation, but specifically motion picture aviation. That's kind of a term that I use loosely, but motion picture aviation to me is anything that is flying on camera or flying a camera. So it's the art of moving the camera through the sky or the precision of flying something that we see in the movies or the TVs flying on camera. That's what I love doing. It's what I grew up doing. Um, I I'm on the board of directors for the Motion Picture Pilot Association, um, and Screen Actors Guild member in the Stunt Association for Screen Actors Guild, as a motion picture stunt pilot, and I've been accepted Motion Picture Plan of Activities, which is basically like our Bible, how we operate in the United States. And just recently added on a couple licenses, commercial validation in the UK, as well as one in the EASA, so the European Unions as well. So trying to go a little bit more global. And just
Nice.
started a brand new company called X Brand, which is Advanced Motion Picture Aviation or Cinematography. And got an amazing team and lots of cool toys, and just loving every second of the journey here.
Yeah, it certainly seems like this would be a job that would be so much fun and really rewarding. I've been kind of leading up to this interview, thinking about what it means to me when I'm watching a movie, specifically a movie that has sequences in the air, and how if the director and you as the aerial coordinator do it right, how it just brings a movie watching experience to the next level. And so I do want to talk a lot about that. But before we get into that, like you said in your intro there, and me checking out your bio on your website, you've been doing this, I mean, since you were a little kid, effectively. It sounds like you were joining your dad on set, and this is seriously something that you've been doing since you were probably a preteen.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's pictures of my dad, I'm sitting on his lap in a Long Ranger, I'm a baby, but my first flight lesson was 14. But I can honestly tell you from a very young age, from being just a little boy, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a fighter pilot. I didn't want to be an airline pilot. I wanted to be a motion picture stunt pilot and an aerial coordinator. So very one track vision, and it was never diverted. Although, just like any person in any profession that has a dream, definitely not a straight path. In fact, some of the best advice I give to, people that are building time, students, or even CFIs, when you have that vision of where you want to go, likely how you're going to get there is not how you planned. And as long as you keep your head focused of where you envision yourself being, you'll get there. You just have to accept all the different paths and zigzags and everything. And that happened for me. In fact, the very person that I mentored me, my hero, my idol, my dad, Kevin LaRosa Sr., excuse me, is the one who at 17 gave me the hardest piece of advice I've ever been given. And basically, I was going on movie sets with him. By that time, I was ferrying helicopters for him, but just as a ferry pilot, nothing on screen yet. I hadn't earned that right in that experience. But I was his fuel truck driver and his ground safety coordinator, which is like the pilot on the ground, helping direct where he should be. And he said, Bud, you're going to have to quit this business. If you ever want to do what I do, you're going to have to leave, or else you are going to fail. Trust me, you are going to fail. And as a 17-year old kid, kind of right where you think you should be, that is really difficult advice. But being that he's my hero, I took his advice, and basically what he was trying to do was get me to go out in the industry by myself and become my own man, become my own aviator, make my mistakes, learn my hard lessons, build up hours, build experience, have emergencies, have failures, so that one day I would be able to, and only me would be able to go, you know what, I feel very confident. I think I'm ready to go after my dream again. So that's what I did. And I flew traffic watch Cessnas, and I flew news helicopters and medical helicopters, and dabbled in 133 stuff with Blackhawks, and I flew jet charter all over North America and South America. I did all these different things, and every job I did, I loved. I loved it. Like I was just grinding and pushing every single day to be the best I could be at every job I had because I knew where I wanted to take it. So I just grinded every day. And there was a point in time, I think I was 26 or 27. I was actually working for Helinet Aviation. It's a great company. And I called Alan. Alan was still with us at that time, and said, Alan, I think I've gotten to a point where I'm running thin on vacation days and off days, and I have the experience to finish pursuing my dream. He knew my dream, but he allowed me to work at his fantastic company to build experience. And I went full send, man, independent contractor for the feature film and television industry, and never looked back. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. And for our listeners out there who may not be familiar, Alan is Alan Perwin, who started Helinet. And forgive me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but probably like your dad, was kind of a pioneer when it came to cinematography, Hollywood flying, things like that. Is that correct?
Alan was incredible. Alan was an amazing film pilot. And I think people have told you this before. He just had this uncanny sense of business, aviation sense, and he could just see things coming before they happened. So he was really good at positioning himself and his company. So I watched him too growing up, and just how he flew and how he ran his business. So he didn't know it, but he was a bit of a mentor to me as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, unfortunately, I never got to meet Alan personally. Alan had his accident, obviously, and Catherine, his wife, now is running Helinet. Did a podcast actually with Catherine some months ago, actually there and Van Nuys, so that was fun to go and say hello to them. And got a good buddy now, Sean, who's the chief pilot over there. So,
Yeah.
really cool company, and got to hear a lot of really cool stories and the history of kind of Alan and what he did. So it was cool that you brought that up. I didn't know if we were gonna to talk about him at all, and I think it's awesome that we did. So I'm
Yeah. I mean,
glad that you brought that up.
sure. I mean, and a lot of people don't understand like the history of motion picture aviation, but I appreciate and watch carefully of all the founding fathers of my industry and all the people that are at the top of their game. Even Fred North, a testament to him. We're competitors. We're colleagues in this industry, and he's killing it out there. He's in his heyday, and much respect to him. I have a lot of really great industry colleagues. And everybody's really good at what they do, and sometimes they're really good at very specialty things. So I think that's really smart. We appreciate each other. We do different things. Sometimes we compete on the same jobs. But I wish, everybody safety and much respect, and we're brothers in the same industry, if you will.
Yeah, and it's probably helicopters as an industry is super tight, right, and small as it is. So I can imagine the industry within the industry that you're in is even smaller. It's really only a select few people that are doing this, and so I'm sure you guys kind of all know each other, probably have to collaborate at times together. I'm not really sure how that all works, but it certainly seems that you're at the top of your game right now. Um, and I remember at Heli Expo last year, Mike from MHM was like, "Hey, you got to meet Kevin." And I was like, I was kind of feeling nervous, actually. I got to be honest with you. I'm like, oh man, like, I've been able to follow you, and specifically with Top Gun and everything. And it was super fun. You and I ended up actually doing the 145 demo together,
Yeah,
and I think there was like what 8 or 9 of us, and they're like,
yeah.
"Who's gonna fly the 145?" And I'm like, "I want Kevin to fly the 145 because I'm gonna be in the back." That was cool. That was a fun demo, and it was. I felt good having you at the controls, of course.
Oh man, that's a really nice compliment for you to say. I hear that from time to time. I really don't think of myself that way. At the end of the day, I think of myself as I'm going to say just a pilot, just an aviator, right? I legitimately just love flying. And I think what people see is they see a guy that's just so wound up in his profession. Like I am a little crazy for it. I literally study my movie manual. I study the rigs as they pertain to me. Um, I study RFMs. I mean, I fly a lot of different aircraft too, which I enjoy. But what we lack when that happens is proficiency in a single type, right? So if you're flying an A star every single day, specific model of A star, you are just king of that helicopter. You know every sound it makes, every nook and cranny, every number. If you're flying 10 aircraft, um, a lot, it gets very difficult. And one thing, my standard operating procedure before I do a job in any aircraft, if I'm going to fly a Huey next week, I'm going to be in the RFM and I'm going to be studying. Doesn't matter how many hours I have in the machine. Um, it's proficiency and knowing that aircraft, so it's an extension of your body, so that you can also focus, multitask on the filmmaking aspect, right? So I think like what you said, you look up to me. I don't see myself that way. I just love doing this, and I love going to airports, and I love talking about it, and I love when people ask me, "Hey, how do you get into that thing?" I was very lucky. I kind of got brought up into it in a family, so that's the who side of it. But trust me, I've seen guys lateral into this industry all the time. In fact, I'm bringing in an apprentice right now to that I think is just a great pilot and has the right personality, and I want to build him into somebody that's part of our team. So, for those of you that think the industry is really cool, trust me, it is super cool. And if it's something you want, in this great country, I believe anything you can get your hands on, as long as you put your head down and work hard, you're going to have it. So that's my philosophy.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that on the podcast actually, and it's not always about like what you know or if you're even the best pilot, but it's about your personality. It's about, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to do things on the ground to learn the operation from the ground up, so to speak? What is the attitude that you bring to the office and your coworkers every day? We talk about that so much on the podcast, and I think it's so important because whether someone wants to get into what you're doing or they want to get into utility or medical, whatever type of flying that they're interested in, it's often more about like the person that you are and being someone that people actually want to work with.
Man, Halsey, I can't agree with you more. I mean, when we talk about like adding people to our team, it's like 50% skill. You got to be good at what you do. And then it's like the other half is all personality, because we want to work with cool people. If you're on the road, you're traveling with somebody, you need to trust them. They need to be predictable. I'll tell you that my personality traits are ever evolving. Um, who I am today as an aviator is different than who I was 5 years ago. It's different who I was 10 years ago. And that will continue evolving. One thing I will say, it's so easy in this industry, to get an ego. We all have egos, right? We're pilots, whatever, A type personalities. We all have egos, and that's fine, because we need to be captains and we need to be commanders of our aircraft. It's very difficult to check your ego, and I'm learning more about that every single day. We do these very cool things. They get a lot of attention. I probably don't post as much as I should on social media of the stuff we do. Um, I'll tell you this. I worked with two amazing teams in the last year and a half. One was the United States Navy Blue Angels, and the other was the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. And on both of these occasions, separate occasions, I was selected to be a helicopter pilot to film their demonstrations. These are projects that we're going to see come out this year. It's the first time a civilian helicopter, which is an Airbus H-125, was allowed to be within the formation during the demo with
Wow.
with zero lateral, like zero restrictions on how close I can get. Talk about trust. Um, and that took a buildup, right? It wasn't, we just didn't go diving into that. It was very rewarding to do that job. It was very difficult to do that job. I had to memorize the routines and where I needed to be and how to create really cool camera movements so we can just showcase these teams in a different way. But I will tell you, what I took away as a human being from both of those pinnacle like professions, those teams, those people together is insane. One thing I'll say is, there's these personality traits which they look for, and now I've adopted that. This accountable, predictable, professional, and I love this one, an aggressive sense of humility. Okay, we struggle with this as aviators. I struggle with this as an aviator. But I can tell you it's something that we actually include in our briefing now. Like we strive for this. And here's what I can tell anybody listening to this. And by the way, I am not the best pilot on this podcast. I'm trying to be the best pilot I could be. I'm competing with myself. So by any means, I don't want anyone listening to this to think Kevin thinks he's better than anybody. That's not the case. But I will share with what I learned. And I was never a CFI, but it's fun when we learn about ourselves and teach other people about our mistakes. The aggressive sense of humility means you can land from any mission. I don't care if you're a Part 135 pilot, you're a news helicopter pilot, maybe you're a CFI, and you can sit in front of the people that were part of that mission. So your other crew members or the talent or whatever. Of course, maybe not the passengers on a 135 flight, but maybe your colleagues when you get back to base and go, you know what? I screwed this up today. Or I almost forgot to do this. Or I didn't plan my fuel. I landed with the fuel light on and I did not plan for that. When we talk about the things we did wrong, let me tell you, it just checks a whole different level inside. When we bury those, right? When it's embarrassing, and that's normal. How in front of our peers when we make mistakes, we don't really want to advertise those or put the light on those. When you get to a point, and I'm still working on this, where you could put the light on that and be like, raise your hand, and be like, oh my God, I screwed this up. I'm sorry about that. I guess I
All
should
good.
mute my phone. I owe everybody a beer now. Um, when you can sit down in a debriefing, raise your hand and go, I almost killed you, or I screwed this up. That is the excellence that we want to obtain. And I learned that from the Blues and the Thunderbirds because every single mission they're going, man, last flight I screwed this up. On this flight, I'm going to nail it. So it's just about that personal growth, personal development. And that's something that I'm really passionate about these days. If I can go just a little deeper on what you just said, when I was a kid, a really, really young kid, and I was watching my dad be this really well known film pilot. That was my dream. And my dream was to be the world's best aerial coordinator and motion picture stunt pilot, the world's biggest, best. That was my dream as a kid. Um, some years later, when I was a teenager, my dad had a very bad accident in a helicopter, and I was on set to see it. And most people would think that, watching something like that happen to your father would deter you from the industry or it would make you afraid of the industry. And honestly, I thought, I saw my life flash before my eyes if I was going to lose my dad, but he survived it and he was back in the seat, I think 9 months later, which was pretty crazy.
Wow.
After that accident, my whole my whole philosophy changed. I didn't want to be the best anymore. I wanted to be the best and the safest, right? Because 1 second of what we do can change the whole outcome of the flight. It's inherently risky, any aviation job, right?
Everything is. Yeah,
So,
everything in this business.
exactly. So after that, my whole philosophy changed, right? It never used to include safety. It was just, I wanted to be the best, the biggest and the best. Now it was like, well, our lives are in, where other people's lives are in our hand. Well, then I got to a point later in my life where it changed again. And this was my own personal development. I had an over torque and an A star. No big deal. No parts got thrown away. It was a minor over torque event, but that was really embarrassing for me. And it happened in association on a film set. And it wasn't that there was an overtake. No big deal. It was how I handled it because I was embarrassed about it. Right. So that was a personal development thing on myself. Well, looking back on that, 6, 7 years ago, again, my philosophy has changed. I feel like I was trying to be the best and the safest, but I was competing with my colleagues, those people around me. Right now, I'm competing with me. I want to be the best that I could be. I don't care. I have blinders on, and all I want is to be the best that I can be and the safest I can be. And I feel like that's put a lot more focus on myself personally of how good of a pilot, how precise I can be, and how safe I can be. So, same goal, but I would say different levels of it have changed over the years.
Well, I think it's really important for all of us as more seasoned pilots. Obviously, you and I are still on the excuse me, on the younger end, but we have a lot of flight time, a lot of flight experience, some bit of a platform, and I can honestly say, and I'm sure you probably don't remember, but when I started talking to you at Expo last year, and I'm oh, Top Gun and blah blah blah, you just started talking about safety. Like literally, you just started talking about what you're trying to do in the industry to make it safer. And Mike, obviously our mutual friend, has talked a lot about that in regards to you and kind of what you're doing within your industry to kind of lead from the top, right? And set a precedence of safety because you're exactly right. It takes one little mess up, uh, one lapse in judgment to really have a catastrophic event. And so I think it's really cool. And I'm not sure about your industry, but I'm guessing like most helicopter industries, as time has gone on, say from when your dad and Alan were pioneering all this, the industry that they were in is probably completely different now, right? I would have to say there's probably been a lot of measures that has made it safer.
I think you're absolutely right, and really a testament to the production studios, the safety departments that they have stood up, and the individuals that they've hired to run their safety departments are really on it. Halsey, when I get as an independent contractor, when a studio like Paramount or Warner Brothers hires me or any of my colleagues, we become an employee of theirs. We wear their hat, and we become almost a departmental head for a specific production. So if we're making an aviation movie, and I'm hired as the aerial coordinator, I am now hired as an employee of production to represent them, watch out for their interest, protect individuals, to help put together the sequence. Now that's the safety side. And then from a creative standpoint, I want as much practical, real flying on camera as possible because that's my love. I want to make it as dynamic and as amazing as we could possibly make it to the extent that we don't hurt anybody. I developed a little saying that I love, and I think it's kind of what our core existence as an aerial coordinator would be. And that is this: our job is, well, in the quite simplest terms, we turn storyboards into reality, we turn dreams into real flying. But our job is to de risk every single shot to the fullest extent possible, to which we can still get it done and nobody gets hurt. Everybody gets to go home at the end of the day. And at the same time, make that shot as dynamic and as amazing as it could possibly be. Right? So that's really our core existence. We're going to try to make somebody's dream, somebody's storyboard, somebody's previs into a reality. We're not going to break any regulations. We're not going to violate anything. Our job is to go out there and make that. We're just going to get the best shot we can get, but everybody needs to go home. We're not getting shot at. We're not saving any lives. We're making pretty pictures. It just happens we make really cool, pretty pictures. But there's no excuse for lapsing on safety. Um, I got to give a shout out to, there's so many great professions in the helicopter industry, and they're so methodical with checklist and safety and SMS, and it's the oil industry, and even the news industry has come far. A lot of the news media companies, medical industry. I love all the things I got to witness when I did a lot of those jobs. I feel like I'm going back in time and grabbing some of those policies and bringing them into what I call motion picture aviation. Um, just because I have a profound interest in doing this until the doctor says I'm going to lose my medical, hopefully when I'm 65 or 70. I want to die in a warm bed next to my kids. I don't want to die doing the job I love. I want to promote others around me, build teams, and do this for the rest of my life. And to do that, we have to be
Yeah, no, I mean safety is it's kind of a cliche word sometimes within the industry, but because we're always talking about it, but we as a collective whole, as an industry, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our families. We owe it to our kids, our wives, our parents, our friends. We owe it to our colleagues. We're taking passengers, whether you're taking a med crew or you're taking, passengers or you're taking actors, whatever it may be. we all have to have this same forward momentum of, hey, we need to do what we can do. And I think it's great that you're taking positives from the industries that you've experienced. The SMS side, air medical, 20 years ago versus today's. I mean, night and day, right? Air medical used
Oh
to
yeah.
be like a dangerous, a lot of pilots lost their lives. And now it's probably one of the safer industries within the helicopter world. So it's really awesome that you have that dedication. And I think with you having a bit of a platform, I think that it's really important and awesome to hear that your commitment to not only being the safest pilot you can be, not always the best, but the safest, is something that hopefully younger pilots that are still kind of figuring out the ego side of flying. Because let me tell you, I don't even think I'm like a very egotistical person, but there's something about it when you're flying an aircraft, right? And yeah, you make a mistake, you do this, it's like you feel that ego come in.
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely.
you get the mission, hey, I got to go and save this person's life, doing it, whatever it may be. And so I think it's great that from your perspective, you're kind of leading from that top down. I want to talk about kind of what it means to be an aerial coordinator. I'm unfamiliar with that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
first we just have to take a quick break to hear from Bell Helicopters.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
All right. Thanks to Bell Helicopters for making the helicopter podcast possible. So, Kevin, I hear like the stunt pilot. I've heard that term probably my entire life. I think I have a general idea, but I do want to hear kind of your perspective of what that means. But before talking about that, when I first met you, I think you introduced yourself as like an aerial coordinator. And that was a new term for me. And I've heard it a couple times since. I've met with some other people within your industry and they've used that term. What is that? What does exactly encompass of an aerial coordinator when it goes to motion picture?
There's no finite definition of an aerial coordinator. I can tell you what I would say my colleagues, the MPPA, Motion Picture Pilot Association, what we consider an aerial coordinator, and that is an independent contractor who is hired by the studios to put together and assemble the right team and the right assets to help make an aviation sequence in a project. It could be anything, right? So it could be a movie, it could be a TV show, it could be an Alaska Airlines commercial, you name it. The aerial coordinators, in most cases, and everybody that's in the Motion Picture Pod Association, we are holders of a motion picture movie manual, and this manual is our Bible. It has everything in there that we need to operate and do our job. It is accepted by the FAA. It has an associated 77 waiver that's issued to us that's good for 2 years in the contiguous United States. It gives us approval to waive regulations when it's necessary. And most importantly, what the FAA is looking for, that whole thing talks about how we protect the general public, right? Um, Working with the Navy on Top Gun Maverick, one of the things they said is most of their policies, regulations, and rules are written in blood. It simply means that people have lost their lives because things weren't done right. Things had to change in order to make them safer. And I could say that we're not far from that with the movie industry. The movie manual came about because of accidents and incidents. So it was designed to keep people safe. That's really the number one rule of it. And everything's in there, Halsey. I mean, the size, diameter of the rope that I need to have for somebody hanging under the helicopter, or the size of the lockups or the notifications we need to do with the FAA. So that's all in there. So to me, an aerial coordinator is somebody that's all encompassing. And what's interesting is, as an aerial coordinator, according to the FAA and our movie manuals, I'm not allowed to pay the pilots, right? We all become employees of the production company. So if I owned my own company, we're not just a service provider where you give me a check and I give you all the pilots in the aircraft. It doesn't work that way. There's a very finite way that this works in the movie industry. Movie industry typically will lease aircraft from an owner, the leaseor. Production becomes the leasee, and all of us, everybody that's part of that aerial team, becomes an employee of production. And we all have very specific jobs. There are two qualities that I want to tell you that I think really define an aerial coordinator. One of them is when to say no, right? So being able to stand in front of a Michael Bay or someone that exudes a lot of confidence and knows exactly what they want, and being able to say absolutely not, we're not going to do that because no one's going to get hurt today, or it's that's going to take us across that line, right, where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. That's not a place to operate an aircraft in. That's when you say no. So that is the number one most important quality. And the other important quality that my dad taught me and all my colleagues operate by is sometimes it's not you that's in the limelight. Sometimes you don't get the fun job. If somebody calls me up and says that they need a BO 105 to do low level aerobatics through a building, I would love to do that. I'll train for that for 6 months to do that job, but I'm not going to put myself there. I'm going to put Aaron Fitzgerald there from Red Bull. I'm going to put the best person that is most proficient in the right place so that we look good collectively as a team. Now, some aerial coordinators aren't pilots. I'm a pilot slash aerial coordinator, and I'm pretty proficient on a lot of things, but not everything. So it's my job as aerial coordinator to decide who goes where. So that's the aerial coordinator side of it. The stunt pilot, if I could just talk on that really quick,
Sure.
we use that term very, very loosely. I always tell people, yes, we do stunts with aviation assets, jets, helicopters, and airplanes, but it is so rehearsed and so methodical and so regulated. It's hardly a stunt sometimes, even if it looks wild and crazy on Instagram or on in the movie. Um, we're called stunt pilot because it's inherited from our union. We're stunt men and women as pilots. We are part of the Screen Actors Guild, and we work under specific schedules under SAG. And we are part because we are stunt men and women pilots. We are fit under Screen Actors Guild. So that stunt was inherited. So when we call ourselves stunt pilots, it's really what we are, part of our union. That's where we operate. Um, but I can tell you this, at least with me and the people that I work with, and I can generally say everybody in the Motion Picture Pod Association, um, we don't send it, right? We crawl, walk, run. I know every movie pilot that I know, if they're hired to go, run through a canyon with a Black Hawk and chase it with an A-Star, they're not going to do that until they ground scout the camera, or have people on the ground or ground safety, or know where every wire, every rock, every tree is. There's a mythology of this crawl, walk, run where we build into stunts for proficiency. And also, we're trying to obtain excellence in repetition. I had a really cool one a couple years back where I got to land at 500 on a moving train with guys on either side, and I needed to hit a mark in like a 3-inch little mark so that I didn't hit a camera and I didn't hit guys over here and they had room to jump off either side. I don't train for that every day. I'm pretty good at a 500. I'm not the best 500 pilot in the world. I'm pretty good, but I mandated with production that I had the train a day ahead of time with the full stunt team and a huge portion of track so we can go out and we could become proficient. We literally put our own training syllabus together, and we landed on that train when it was static, hitting a 1-inch mark. And then we went 5 miles an hour, and then 10, and then 15, and then 20. And then we put the guys on and we did it all over again. By the time we got to the shoot day the next day, we nailed it on the first take. And I was hoping we would have done more takes because we were building up the energy. But that's the kind of way that we work into anything we do. It's always excellence in repetition, precision. How we always going to be at the airspeed we're supposed to be, the altitude and the right mark. We're never just sending it, even though sometimes it looks like that on Instagram, I'd say.
Well, I mean, that's you guys are so professional at what you do, right? It looks like it's insane, but I've heard that many times before that it's very much rehearsed. And it's funny as you were talking about stunt pilot, I was thinking in my head like, yeah, it is kind of a funny name, like the stunt pilot, and then you kind of brought that into it, so I appreciate that. Uh, when it comes to say a movie like Top Gun, obviously that's a big, an amazing movie, and I'm actually curious to hear a lot about what it took to make that movie. But kind of what is like the what does it look like from start to finish to create what you all created in that movie? I would love to just hear kind of the timeline, how long it took, the new technology that was implemented, just everything about Top Gun that just made it so amazingly special.
Um, well, I guess I'm pretty grateful. I mean, I'm pretty young in my career right now. I'll probably be doing this hopefully for another 30 or 35 years. Um, so I got a phone call to work on Top Gun Maverick. I think I was 30 or 31 years old, and it originally started as the camera jet pilot. One of my things that I'm very proficient on, I've been doing for a long, long time, is flying high-speed camera platforms like jets. And got that phone call, and that was amazing. But really, and I heard Tom Cruise say this quote the other day, and he said it a long time ago, but he believes that you have to will your luck. It doesn't just happen. You kind of put yourself in a position in life to make things happen. And I got to say, I ultimately believe that. And the way I did that with Top Gun Maverick, it was no accident that I got that movie, and it wasn't even because I worked hard to become a camera jet pilot. I knew that Maverick would get made one day. I was working on a movie called Jack Reacher with Tom, and I remember walking back to base camp with him, and he knew my dad. He knew I was a jet camera guy, and he said, "Kev, one day we're going to make Top Gun 2. You know, it was going to be called Maverick." And he said, "When we make that movie, everything has to be real. Everything has to be real. I don't want any CGI. It's all got to be real, but I don't think we have the right technology yet, and we don't have the story yet." And I never forgot that. And he got called away, and I'm walking, and I'm like, "Did he just tell that to me? Are you kidding me?" And I never stopped thinking about that. So my gears are turning, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm flying a super cool Lear 25 right now, which has been around for about 30 years for a company called Wolf Air. It was a great company, cool airplane, but very antiquated camera technology on that aircraft. And I started thinking of other jets, and I'm like, well, maybe if I build a platform, maybe I'll have a chance to work on that movie. So maybe I'll give that a shot. And I ended up partnering with some amazing people. Patriot Jet Team. They're the only civilian jet aerobatic team in the United States. They had two spare L-39s, and I pitched the business deal to the owner, Randy Howell, and said, if you let me fly and build those two airplanes into what I trademarked as the Cinejet, I think I could probably bring in a big movie, maybe Top Gun. And Randy, in all of his wisdom and just being super generous, agreed to it. So I trained in the L-39, got rated in it. Started building this camera platform with Randy. Brought in Shotover, worked with Shotover to make the F1 Rush, which is the jet system, which can do 350 knots and 3 Gs. And eventually we came away with this L-39, which was awesome, but no phone calls, no Top Gun. So, believe it or not, the first job for that aircraft was for Delta Airlines. They found out about it. They thought it was cool. Not really built to shoot airline commercials, but if you're ever flying out of Hartsfield, Atlanta, and you're seeing cool, actually, there are pictures in LA too, just really pretty pictures of the A350 when they first bought it. That was shot with the Cinejet that I built for Top Gun Maverick. And I used it as a proof of concept job. The jet made a little bit of money. I realized what worked, what didn't. So we got to kind of change that. So the first job of that airplane was Delta Airlines, which I always thought was kind of funny. And then one Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call in the backyard. They said they heard about the jet and asked if I wanted to be the jet pilot for Top Gun 2. It wasn't called Maverick yet. And I remember playing it cool on that phone call, like, yeah, absolutely, I'd be honored. We'll see if the airplane's available and checks calendars and schedules. And I must have hung up the phone and just yelled at the top of my lungs. One of those moments in life where somebody caught the Hail Mary pass you threw. From there, my role grew to be the aerial coordinator of the whole movie.
Well, I think I want to continue on the path because this is just so fascinating to kind of hear the back end. I think anytime you get to hear the back end of movie making is always kind of fascinating, at least for me. But then to hear it from your perspective on the aviation side is is just super fun. But to our listeners out there, take note of what Kevin is talking about. I mean, he had a conversation with Tom Cruise about maybe the possibility of this movie, and he didn't just sit around. You put yourself in a position to receive that luck. Whereas, it wasn't like you were just sitting around on a Sunday and the call came out. I mean, I'm guessing that there was probably a lot of stress that you're not putting into this story of convincing the Patriot team to let you use these two jets. The money that it's going to cost you and everyone, your reputation. I can only imagine that putting yourself out there like that was extremely scary. And I don't think people get to see that all the time, right? People just see you're walking the red carpet at Top Gun Maverick. And I don't think that they actually understand, like, in order for people like yourself to do what you do, you're out there making it happen. You're taking business risks, not piloting risks, but you're out there. So I think that that's really neat, and that can be translated into not just the helicopter industry, but just life in general. So many people are just waiting around for that phone to ring because they want an opportunity, but they're not going out and they're not trying to get that opportunity themselves. So I think it's really fun and really cool. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's an important life lesson for our listeners out there. So
Yeah, and look,
sorry to
they don't
derail
always
that.
work. No, look, yeah, my philosophy, I've had 10 horrible ideas and one good one will work, and that's so normal. And you got to act on them, and you got to do the work. And the scariest thing for me is I don't like leveraging myself where I overpromise and underdeliver, and I hate owing people money. With the Cinejet, Catherine Perwin and Helenet were another valuable partner that helped me put that airplane together. And I was stressed every day because I was making promises and trying to deliver them back with hard work. Um, and I got lucky with that one, as we talked about, kind of put myself in the right spot. And I was on the movie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you were open to receive that luck, and I think it's easy for, people to look at successful people in any fact of life and just say like, oh, I wish I was that person. Like, how does that person get so lucky? They don't get to see the whole backstory all the time. So I think it's really important to hear about that stuff. So I think that's super cool. Um, so you know, you get called to be the jet guy for the movie, work your way into the aerial coordinator position. One thing that I love about Tom Cruise is that guy seems like he's like seriously crazy with the stunts that he does to make his movies so realistic. I mean, I was watching that behind the scenes the other day where he's taking the dirt bike off the ramp and base jumping. I mean, the guy is insane.
You
Like,
know what though, Halsey? He's not crazy and insane. He's crazy and insane about his profession,
yeah, it's
right?
nuts.
Like how, but I can relate. Like I'm crazy and insane about my profession, and when you're that obsessed with something, like he told us right from the get go. Like I mean, you can tell he just wants to make the very best movie possible for people, and that shines through every single day. He gave a pep talk at Lemoore. We worked at every naval base from San Diego all the way up to Whidbey, North Island. And I remember one of the very early principal of photography, we were at Lemoore, Naval Air Station Lemoore. I had both Cinejets there and an A-Star there. And we were getting ready to work. And he kind of pulled the crew in and he gave this little talk. I don't even think he realized he was doing it, but we were getting ready to go out on the ramp and different units were going to go different places. And he was like, guys, we're getting ready to start something very historical. We're at a disadvantage. We're making a sequel to a very iconic movie. And everything we do has to be perfect. We will settle for nothing less than perfect. We will reshoot and reshoot and reshoot until it's perfect. Um, so there was no laziness allowed on this movie. It was full send every day, and if it wasn't insane on the big screen, we were going to do it again. I mean, the movie is a white elephant for the aerial photography world. I mean, a year I was on the movie, and the amount of flying I did between the Phenom 300 camera jet, the L39 Cinejet, I had two jets on the movie, and then the A-Star flying. It was insane how much we flew. And it was really, and the aviators listening to this will love this. We call it Tom Cruise's rule number one. There was lots of Cruise rules, but you'll like this one. There always had to be an aircraft in frame. Seems simple enough, but that means if we were shooting something, even if it was an Su-57 that we didn't have in the United States or an F-14, there had to be an aircraft in frame, in lens, and we would use CG to skin replace, like technology they have these days. I'd go out and shoot a sequence with an F-18, and like a week later, Ryan, the VFX supervisor on the movie, would show me his laptop and be like, "Do you believe this?" And he would play it, and it would be what I shot. It's my shots, it's our shots, and it's an Su-57 or an F-14 and the lighting and the control surfaces, and they literally just took an F-18 and skin replaced it, and it was insane, and a huge testament to my other half on the movie, and I'm not talking then I was married. I'm talking about the aerial DP as an aerial coordinator and camera pilot. We're 50% of the equation, and they really don't get enough attention. I might be moving the jet or the helicopter through a point through space. That's great. But unless they're operating at those camera systems, those gimbals to the highest level, then we don't have a shot. So on that movie, we had David Knoll, who worked on the first Top Gun. David Knoll is an icon, a legend in motion picture aviation. He's an aerial director of photography and a camera operator. And we also have my business partner right now, an X brand, Michael Fitzmaurice, who I think is second to none as far as the ability to track high speed objects and put shots together. Um, and I know it doesn't seem as intense, but if I can just tell you from being a pilot on board, flying the jet and helicopter, these guys are in the back of the jets and helicopters and they're buried in a screen while I'm maneuvering pretty hard through, glaciers and trees and snow or canyons. And they're just buried in these monitors no matter what I do, and they don't get sick. And they're talking to me and they're framing the shots. So I need to give them a little love because I feel like a lot of times the film pilot gets a whole lot of attention, and really, I'm 50% of the equation. So,
Yeah, it's like a team, right? It's kind of like,
yeah.
of course, the pilot's a little bit of the quarterback. That's cool. I get it. Um, right. But just like just like in football, right? Everyone has a role from the center to the quarterback to the kicker. Um, and that's what makes truly amazing outcomes is by working together as a team. Um, from the outside perspective, I don't know Tom Cruise, but it seems like Tom is like a very passionate aviator. Uh, is that like a big reason why he was so motivated to make this? Like, it almost was like a movie made for pilots, I felt like, because it was like allowing us to vicariously be in the cockpit of these jets. And I felt like I was part of the sequence. I mean, is that, I don't think other actors who were not maybe passionate about aviation would have ever really thought about that.
No, and listen, he's a great aviator. He would show up sometimes. He'd commute in his P-51 Mustang, which is no easy aircraft to fly. It's a beautiful World War II Mustang that's used in the movie, and he flies it expertly. He has a Honda jet that he flies himself. He flies A-Stars incredibly well. He can get in and out of different aircraft and transition and know them very, very good. The other thing I loved is he's really good with briefing. I would put together briefing plans for our filming sorties for the day, and he will hang on every word and he will question something if timing didn't make sense. And even if he's in the F-18s with the naval aviators, he is so on point with everything where they needed to be, where the sun needed to be. He was extremely passionate. He's probably the most motivated guy I've ever seen in my life, just through life, just first in, last out type mentality. And another thing, people will like hearing about him. There was one sequence in Maverick where we built these very expensive camera mounts for his P-51 Mustang. And it was for the end of the movie. If you remember, there's a beautiful scene with him and Jennifer Connelly flying the Mustang at the end of the movie. That's all shot real. That's myself and Michael Fitzmaurice in the Cinejet chasing Tom and Jen through those canyons. All shot practically, no CGI. Probably the world's biggest production insurance policy to have Tom and Jennifer in the Mustang
Yeah,
ripping
seriously.
around. Um, and they wanted to shoot it, or we thought we would shoot it using these mounts where like one was on the glare shield like looking right at them, one was right on the wing looking at them, one was on the side of the fuselage, and they're incredible camera positions. We brought in Steve Hinton Jr., probably the world's best P-51 pilot, I would say, and he went and flight tested these things and he came back to me, and I've known Steve-O for a long, long time, and he came back when he landed and he said, Kev, they took my breath away. The Mustang did not like them. The Mustang's got a very supercritical wing, and it had very dangerous low speed tendencies. So one of your fun jobs as the aerial coordinator is you're the guy that gets to call up Tom and tell him essentially no,
Yeah.
right? Everything we planned for, no, you can't do this. So here's the deal, and this is the way that I was always taught. It's the way that I think is a very respectful way to do things. If you're going to say no to something, you better have a backup plan. And your
Yep.
backup plan better be equal to or greater than what it was going to be. But you don't allow people to pressure you or push you. Now, I was a little concerned I was going to get some perceived pressure or something, but man, Tom, when I said, Tom, I can't let you do that, I think I said something like, look, if you're going to try to do this anyway, then I can't be here to watch it. Like, I will not be the aerial coordinator and watch you get hurt. And he was just like, Kev, no problem. How are we going to do it? Awesome. Here's how we're going to do it. right? And my plan was the Cinejet. I told him I will get equally as close. I'll get that camera right over the wing, close formation. But now I can create movement in light angles and counter you while you're making moves. And it honestly made the aerials in the end of the movie look less rigid, like you were attached to the F-18s, and more beautiful. With the sun moving around the Mustang and the glints, and we got right in there. So um, there's that aerial coordinator thing we talked about before, right? When to say no, and a huge testament to him for no perceived pressure and being on board, and that's cool. That's really
It's
cool.
it's probably a testament to his professionalism in aviation. You know, I'm guessing he gets it. Um, Even though his profession is an actor, it seems like, at least again, I don't know the guy, but from my outside perspective, as a pilot and watching all the different cool pilot stuff that Tom Cruise has done, I've always felt like he gets it. Like he brings a level of professionalism to the cockpit, that you would hope professional aviators do, not necessarily actors all the time. And you've been around, I'm sure, a lot of people, as I have, that have the means to own aircraft and to fly really cool aircraft. Doesn't always mean that they're like the right person to be flying that machine. And I've never really got that sense. And so I think that that's kind of hopefully why he was, so cool about it. And kudos to you. I think one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned. I was flying. This is before I was just starting flight school, and I just so happened to sit next to this guy flying home from. I guess we were flying home from San Diego back to Portland, and ironically enough, I literally like 2 weeks into helicopter school, and the guy I sit next to had been a command pilot for I think it's the city of San Diego government, flying the fire and doing rescue and all these amazing things. And we chatted the whole time, and the biggest advice that he gave me was be able to say no.
Yeah,
If I could give you any advice, he just said
yeah, man.
be able to say no. And I'm like 18 at the time, and I had really no idea what that meant. Like, what does he mean say no? And throughout now my 15 years of being a professional pilot, I get it now. I get what it means to have to sometimes be the bearer of bad news, and because that's our responsibility as a pilot in command, is to be able to say no, and again present an alternative if there's an alternative available. But it is certainly one of the hardest things that we can do in aviation. And I get it. I thought that was pretty funny what you said earlier. Telling Michael Bay no. I mean, I can imagine the pressure in your industry. There's probably schedules. There's probably times where you have to like shoot this day. I can only imagine it makes it even harder to sometimes have to make that hard no call.
Yeah, no, it does. But you have to, right? Again, we're not getting shot at here. We don't have an organ in the back seat. We don't have a patient that has minutes and seconds in the back seat. We are making pretty pictures, and we have a responsibility to make sure everybody gets to go home every night, and that's part of holding that aerial coordinator role.
I do want to talk a little bit more about all the cool things that you do, but real fast, gotta take a quick break to hear from
Let's,
our friends at Celicopter.
let's do it.
As always, a special thanks to Celicopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, Celicopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. Celicopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, Celicopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-Celicopter. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a Celicopter pilot agent will reach out. Celicopter. List it, sell it, done.
All right. Thanks to our friends over at Celicopter for making this podcast possible. Kevin, in the entire sequence of Top Gun Maverick, what is kind of like a highlight for you? Like when you were at the premiere watching, did you have an idea of like, hey, this is going to be the scene or the sequence that really like gets people excited when you were doing it? And then to see it on the big screen, I mean, is there a particular time in the movie that's just like, wow?
There are so many moments in that movie. There's just so much fun. The whole movie is like aerials. I tell people this because it's honestly the truth. There was a build up throughout the movie. So the movie was shot mostly in chronological order. And the way that Joseph Kosinski, who's an incredible director and a friend of mine, built that movie is that is a build up, right? So every aerial sequence gets crazy, more dynamic, harder hitting. And that was the philosophy, right? Get people to the edge of their seats right into that third act, we call it the final sequence, where they're going into those icy canyons. And um, so that was some of the last flying we had on the movie, and it was insane, like literally crazy. I mean, there were moments where I would told production I wanted to hire follow aircraft. I had a follow A star that would just follow us because we were so deep into the Cascade Mountain Range in the winter. It was so cold and the snow was so deep, and we had no cell service out there. Had we had an accident, it would have taken too long for search and rescue to find us. And we were always thinking of measures that were outside the box because we were just operating in a different realm. Um, and then the jet flying, the the close air to air in the canyons and the inverting over. We called them the goalposts. That was real. We would find all these routes out there and build our route structure for the movie. So all that stuff you're seeing on cameras for the most part real. I mean, obviously we weren't shooting things down or firing missiles, so the aerials were enhanced by CGI, but for the most part all real. There's a couple moments that stand out that are truly special to me. One of them being when I got to fly the Phenom 300 camera ship out to the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and the skipper, the boat, and a bunch of pre-briefing up to that told me I had a 10-foot clearance window. I was allowed to get my jet within 10 feet of the carrier. That's close, and it feels really close when you're there. And my main job on one of those sorties when out there was to film Maverick and Rooster's POV as they're landing on the boat in their F-14 that's been damaged and the barrier's up. They wanted a really beautiful sunset shot of what their first person view would look like for Maverick. And we did 11, I think it was 11 passes, and every one of them I'd get lower until like the last three I was actually going down to my 10-foot hard deck. And that was pretty incredible. As a civilian, getting to fly approaches to a carrier deck down to 10 feet and flying, the meatball and listening to the LSO giving me signals. Well, I will say this for the Navy drivers that are listening to this and the sailors. As a civilian, I got to do it in the daylight, in calm winds, in calm seas, no pitching decks, and not at nighttime in a storm. So it was still difficult for me. And a massive testament to our naval aviators who do that in all weather conditions and at nighttime, pitching seas. I can't imagine. It was really set up for me to win, but it was still one of the highlights, I think, of my career. I remember when I first got to the USS Theodore Roosevelt. When I first arrived, we were doing these bow crosses, and it was while Maverick's waiting to land. I think you remember in the movie he does a flyby, standard Maverick fashion, even in the
Of course.
F-14, right? And they needed the POV for that, which I don't think actually made the movie, but I can tell you how fun it was as a civilian jet pilot to be beating up an aircraft carrier. And I did my first bow cross, pretty respectable, because I didn't know how they were feeling about me. This deck is full of Navy personnel and aircraft, and the skipper's on the radio. Everything's riding on this. I could kill it for the whole movie, get us in trouble, piss everybody off. So I do my first pass, and I think I was probably at like 80 feet over the bow or something like that. And the skipper himself came on the radio and used my first name and just was like, "Hey, Kev, um, we thought you were gonna be lower than that." And I was like, "Okay." And the naval coordinator Brian Ferguson, who was sitting behind me, he was my counterpart in the movie. He was like, "Brother, you just got the clear. Like, send it." So,
No.
we spent the next hour beating the carrier up with a civilian jet, and that was a dream come true.
Yeah, that's probably like kind of like a pinch me moment, right? Like when you're doing
Yeah,
that. Be amazing. Something that you could, take with you for the rest of your life. Uh, Forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think a lot of the sequence and a lot of the with the fighter jets, a lot of naval aviators were actually flying the jets.
they were all
Guys
flying.
that, yeah, guys that were, obviously very accomplished naval aviators, but maybe guys that weren't used to flying for a purpose of a motion picture. Uh,
Exactly.
what was it like for you as an aerial coordinator to obviously work with these super professional pilots, but to be able to help them kind of understand how they had to fly and how you helped probably keep them safe in an environment that they were probably not very familiar with?
It started with when I got awarded the movie. I was flown to um, where Top Gun is based now, which is Fallon, Nevada. It's not in San Diego anymore. And I had to go through an interview. So they brought me to this big building called the Nautic Building. This is where all naval aviation and special warfare training happens. And it was one of those also pinch me moments. And they take your phone away because the building's super secure and lots of amazing special things are happening in this building. And I went into a room and these Navy captains came in and I got to meet an admiral in there. And it was basically an interview that I wasn't really prepared for and I didn't really know was happening, but it was them basically saying, who is this guy? Who is this 30, 31-year-old kid to them? Which is weird because I'm older than most of the pilots that were flying those F-18s. And what does he really think he's going to do with our aircraft and our men and women? Um, and they were sort of sizing me up, and I didn't even realize it then. I was just kind of talking about what our philosophy was and how we wanted to do this, how we wanted to bring it in safely, but how we wanted to make it very accurate and realistic. And they were kind of sizing me up as an individual, my personality, and obviously my skill sets too. And I didn't realize it then, but they basically said, "All right, well, it seems good. Let's see how this goes." And it got to a point where they just had a trust with me. There was another special moment. And I don't really talk about this very often. Just thought about it right now, but I don't know. We're like 6 months into the movie, and I'm sleeping on base housing, and I'm in bed. We have very early calls, and I got a phone call from the naval coordinator on the movie, Captain Brian Ferguson, dear friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, man, I need you to come down to the officers' club right now to have a discussion." And I looked at my watch. I'm like, "Oh, I think they're closed." And he said, "Yeah, they're closed, but there's a couple people here we need to talk to you." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll be right there. I'll throw my clothes on." And I'm thinking in my head, "Man, what did I do? I'm in trouble. I've done something. It's not good." So I run across the street, run over to this place, and front door's locked, and I hear people in the back, and patio porch lights are on. And I go back there, and there's this table, and there's an admiral from the base, and there's him, and there's a couple of the pilots I've been flying with, um, including Chris Papiano, who at the time was the CO for Top Gun, like the real Top Gun. And man, I thought I was going to get ripped into. And really, what it was they said, "Hey, listen, we didn't really know who you were. We didn't trust you when you came into this thing. But as far as we're concerned, um, you know, you should have been a naval aviator, and we wish you were in the brotherhood. Um, Thank you for taking care of our men and women. Thank you for the service that to our country that you're helping showcase what the Navy does. We trust you. We see you." And they slid a pair of naval aviator wings across the table, and they said, you earn these. So that was really
Wow.
special, and that's something that I keep here. I don't talk about that often, but it was that was a very special moment for me. So I feel like I got pretty heavily ingrained into the Navy culture and how they do things, and that was the only way we could make the movie.
Yeah, no, I mean it's incredible. I mean, as you've said many times, team effort. So many things came together to make that truly probably the coolest movie I've ever seen.
Well,
I
one
mean,
other cool thing I got to tell you, you asked about the pilots flying. They wanted to
yes,
spread the love, right? So Navy is really good at doing the Navy's job. Really, really good. And this was not their normal job. In fact, it was far from it. And there was a lot of times we'd be in briefings and like they would say, that's not really how we would do that. And we'd have to explain, well, if we shot it how it was done, no one will go see the movie. So we got to sell some tickets. We want to make it realistic, but in order to make it look realistic, sometimes you have to fly an aircraft in such a way where it'll look good for camera and sell the story and not necessarily maybe be exactly how you'd fly the aircraft if you were doing that mission. Um, but I can tell you that they all got on board with it. They were all very excited about it. And I flew with Top Gun instructors, Top Gun graduates. I flew with guys from different squadrons. We flew with JOs from 122. That's the RAG out of Lemoore. And those guys are teaching people how to go to the boat. They're teaching people how to be naval aviators. They're instructors. They're like CFIs for Navy pilots. And I can tell you that I feel bad for anybody that ever has to go to war with these guys. The potency of just the folks on the JO level, the way they flew those aircraft was insane. And I typically couldn't really tell the difference with what we were asking them to do from Top Gun instructors to JOs, at least with what we were having them do. They were just professional, they were humble, amazing personalities, and really just wanted to help make the movie as good as they could.
Yeah, and they did. I mean, it was. I think that was probably kind of one of the coolest parts of the movie. Is just is it just added so much realism to it,
Yep.
and so I just think that was incredible. Kudos to the actors too. I mean, obviously the press leading up to the release of the movie was talking about how the actors, had to do an extensive amount of training and flight training. Were you involved in any of that and helping kind of coordinate all that?
Yeah. Well, hey, that's Top Gun rule number three, by the way.
Okay.
He created what we called it the Tom Cruise Flight Academy in house, is what I kind of called it. But that was driven by Tom. That's really expensive, and typically studios don't do that. We put people in CG bucks, and we fake it. But on Top Gun Maverick, we did not do that. We had to make sure the actors acted from the backseat of the F-18s. So Tom asked if I would put together a training curriculum to start making them into an aviator. And I put together this first curriculum, and I remember sending it to him. And I remember getting a call from his assistant, and hold for Mr. Cruz. And Tom gets on the phone and goes, "Hey Kev, this is great, but it's not enough. Like, we need more. They need more flying. We this more in-depth stuff." And I put a really good curriculum together, and I was like, "You got it. We'll make it bigger." And of course, the studio was pulling their hair out because there's a lot of liability and there's a lot of cost. But I was their first training pilot in Cessna 172s, along with my father, who's a CFI. So a lot of them were logging time. And then we graduated them out of the 172. And the Cessna was for them to get spatial orientation and how to fly the airplane. We were even teaching them how to talk on the radio. I mean, they literally could take off and land that airplane by the time we were done with them. And then they graduated into Chuck Coleman's program, which was the Extra 300. And they went, that was G tolerance and G fatigue training. And they would go out eventually to the point where they were just pulling sustained 8 Gs in a corkscrew
Wow.
over and over and over. We were trying to build up their tolerance. And yeah, everybody got sick. Everybody was throwing up. Everybody would come back destroyed. But you could see them increasing in their tolerance level, right? It's like an athlete. We're building their mind and their body and their inner ear to be used to this type of thing. And then finally, we graduated out of that. And my partner, Randy Howell, with the Patriot Jet team, took the last sequence, which was putting them in a jet and going out and doing jet to jet, 1B1 type stuff with another L-39, going and doing aerobatics, low level stuff, inverted stuff. By the time they got out of this Tom Cruise, flight academy program and got into the F-18s, they were like, it's no big deal. This is
It's
great.
awesome.
The F-18s pulling 7.5 Gs, they were stressed to 8 Gs all day long in an extra 300. And people still got sick from time to time, but I can tell you the reason they look so good on camera is because they're not freaked out that they're in an F-18, and they don't care that they're pulling 7.5 Gs because they've been doing that for 3 months prior to that every single day. So they were able to focus on acting and their own makeup and rolling the cameras themselves because there was nobody back there with them. They were there by themselves, and man, I couldn't be more proud. They did so good.
Yeah, no, I mean it's incredible. I mean that's your, I mean that's no small task. I mean you're asking people to go very very much outside of their comfort zone. I look at it from my perspective, being like, oh my gosh, like that would have been the most amazing 3 months of my life,
Yeah,
And I'm guessing that these guys and gals, they probably never thought they would ever do anything like this, and they killed it. They did fantastic. Kudos to the studio too for
yeah.
making it happen. I can only imagine, like you said, the cost, the liability, kind of put them, in a pretty high exposure area. So, yeah, phenomenal job, Kevin. Top Gun Maverick, one of many of your projects, but that was certainly a highlight and a crown jewel. What's next for you? Like, what is your plan moving forward with your business?
So X brand advanced aviation cinematography is it's my baby. I started it in January 2023. We've already kind of doubled the size of the company as far as assets owned, our partnerships, and our strength. Um, and it's been an incredible ride. And I'm doing it with the people I love and trust, my brothers that I've been working with for a decade in the business, who all bring unique skill sets, including Aaron Fitzgerald, one of my partners in it. So it's a lot of fun, and I've also learned, team. Like I'm so happy and I'm lucky where I'm in, but I want so much more for myself and my team and my company than what I have right now. It's never enough. Right now, I'm super fortunate. I'm working on the F1 movie, which is a Brad Pitt feature film. Joseph Kaczynski, Claudio Miranda team. So that's our Top Gun Maverick team, basically. So
Wow.
chasing cars with helicopters right now has been a lot of fun. And I just randomly, not randomly, but I was very lucky and fortunate to be selected to be the camera pilot, with my partner, Savage Aviation, Nick Seiko, to go do Formula One in Las Vegas. That was a bit of a dream come true, and that was associated also with the movie. But we were shooting for Formula One as well. Um, we're really expanding the jet operations. Our partner, 3 Delta Fox, is another wing of X Brand, our company. We That company does all the airline commercials, which I fly in the jets. So we Delta and United and American. We're getting ready to go to South America. We go all over the world with those aircraft and do all of those special projects. So whenever you fly in an airline, probably 95% of the time, that stuff we're shooting. We do all the OEMs. So we do Gulfstream, we do Cessna, Textron, we do work for Boeing. So all the manufacturers we're working with to shoot their content, which we love. It's great. Um, and we have some really cool military projects lined up for 2024. Another random Hail Mary I threw, we were talking about business ideas, was what I've trademarked, the movie Hawk. Everybody used Hueys back in the day, and I love Hueys. Don't get me wrong. We got a really cool one right now from our partners at Savage. But Hawks are kind of the newer age, Army helicopters. And before, a production company had to get DoD approval, script approval. But what if you can't get DoD approval? Well, what if there's something in the script that the Army doesn't love or the DoD doesn't love? What do you do if you want a Hawk? And typically there was some Hawks around the country that you could ferry in or fly in. And I said, you know what? I want to be the first guy to have a Hawk specifically in Los Angeles to work on the movie industry and television industry. And I had some partners, Brown Helicopter to name one, Helinet Aviation, when we were over there, helped us as well. But that's kind of an exclusive X brand helicopter now, and it's here in Los Angeles. It's our UH-60 Hawk, and we've trademarked it the movie Hawk, and it's worked on tons of projects. We got one here. We also have one over on the East Coast as well, with Brown Helicopter. So that was another kind of Hail Mary business idea, and that's been a lot of fun too. We have some cool military movies lined up with that. So it's always something. And there's a new jet gimbal coming out, called the Immortal. Shout out to those guys that my company just bought the first gimbal for, Seal number one. And that's all part of innovating. I want to make sure that we're kind of charging ahead in all these different markets. And my hope is to have a camera platform that'll do 450 knots and 5Gs, which is it's almost double what I had on Maverick. So
Wow.
gotta keep trying.
I love it, man. It seems like the movie going experience, TVs, movies is only going to get better with forward thinkers like yourself doing all the aviation side of the house. It's just truly incredible. I saw on your website. I have to talk about it because I thought it was like one of the coolest documentaries I ever watched. Was Free Solo.
Oh yeah.
You did stuff for that as well.
I wish I did more on that. I was a bit of a hired gun on that. It was a shout out to John Stratman and his company Van Calcini, and I think I was covering for somebody who wasn't available. But what a great project to get a phone call for, to go be a camera pilot on. That guy was insane. We had the park restriction over Yosemite. I couldn't, get inside of the special use airspace, so we were above it using basically a lens to film him, so pretty powerful lens. But that guy had no safeties on, and I was sitting in the helicopter just going, like, I was scared for him. And we're watching the guy climb, and then we'd be like, hey, can you reset? We want to get this one little piece of rock again. And he's just climbing back down, no safeties. So I was so nervous on that job, and he's a beast. So, but yeah, that was
Yeah,
hard to go.
that's like a hard movie for me to watch. I love watching it, but it's like my hand, I'm sweating the whole time. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that was me
And
when I was flying.
yeah, I thought about that actually when I saw that on your website. I don't. I would have been probably nervous just to be filming it and be a part of it, but that's super cool. Uh, there's probably a lot of young kids, maybe not super young. I don't know what my how young my demographic gets, but probably young men and women that are interested in doing what you do, that listen to my podcast. What is like the one piece of advice you've given so much already today, but like what would bring it home for you of like if someone wants to be doing what you're doing, maybe even with you someday, what would you tell that person?
You got to put in the work. Um, one thing I will tell you is I've refused to be outworked my whole life, whether it's studying or reading or writing or behind the scenes, or even if it's just waking up and going to the gym and getting my mind focused for the day. Um, you got to put in the work, and you have to have the vision. And once you have the vision of where you see yourself, you have to keep that, and you have to work really, really hard for it. It's not easy to be good. It's really difficult to be good, and um, I think that's my main thing is I will never be overworked. I don't I just I've latched on to anything I could do in one specific field. So if you like that field and you want to do what I do, you would be latching on to how do you build as much experience as you can in the aviation sector, specifically with those makes and models that you want to fly. Be professional, be totally skilled as much as possible in those assets, and then also the other half of it is filmmaking. Understand camera movement and lens and backlighting and making a shot happen, understanding how movies work and stuff. So there's kind of you're merely mixing those two fields when you do what we do. And a lot of my stuff has been watching and learning from my colleagues, professionals, and mentors. And but that's my biggest piece of advice: know what you want to do and grind like your life depends on it until you get there.
Love it. Yeah, it's not often said enough that hard work truly does pay off, and it starts by getting up every day and bringing it, and it's hard. It's there's so many, we as humans come up with so many different excuses of why we shouldn't have to bring it today, but truly you got to wake up with a different mindset every day. I feel like you bring a level of professionalism and artistry to your work, and you can see that when you see what you do. And so kudos to you. Congratulations on starting your business. That's super exciting. For people that want to follow you, check out your business, how do they find you?
Thanks for that. Yeah. I'm not amazing at updating my Instagram. I'll try to do more, but if you want that, it's K2 LaRosa. Uh, K2 LaRosa. K2 is a name that I got on set. People ask me all the time. It's become a call sign on Maverick. A lot of the naval aviators call me K2. And it's because of my dad. When I was going out on set with him, we're both Kevin LaRosa. We're both
Yeah.
Kevin and LaRosa. People would call on the radio, for us, hey, Kevin, and we'd both answer. And finally, I remember one assistant director was like, okay, stop. You're K1 and you're K2, and that's stuck. And I'm fine with that. It's cool. I love where I came from. So K2 LaRosa is the Instagram. I have a website also, K2LaRosa.com. And then the company is called X Brand. And yeah, stay tuned. We're doing fun things. And also, feel free to reach out. Feel free to email. If I miss it, send it again. If I miss a direct message, keep bugging me. Try to get back to everybody. I love the questions and I love helping and inspiring if I could do that to my peers.
No, it's awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin, for taking the time to meet with me today. I'm kind of a nerd about I'm like getting into mountaineering, very like in the entry level, but I've been reading all these books on like the 8,000 meter peaks and everything. And when I saw your handle K2, it's a badass nickname.
That's a
It's
big
not a bad.
mountain.
It's a big ass scary mountain. I think there's like four different books that are K2 Savage Mountain. So gnarly, gnarly, gnarly. But to our listeners, thank you so much. We've gone a little long today. I just that's like, how can you not with Kevin? So I appreciate you, Kevin, taking the time to chat with me. Super interesting. I really want to do some future things with you, with maybe coming and living vicariously through a week in the life of K2.
That sounds
And
fun.
allowing my audience to kind of really see what it's like behind the scenes of doing all the cool and amazing things that you do. And to our listeners, thank you so much. Happy New Year to everyone. Continue to like and follow and listen. And just a big special thanks to Kevin for making it out today. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.